February 22, 1968, deep inside the Vietnamese jungle. 8 Australian SAS soldiers lay completely motionless in the darkness around them. Hundreds of enemy troops flowed past like a living river, so close that one Viet Cong soldier stopped barely 3 feet away and relieved himself, unaware that death was watching from the shadows. When dawn arrived and the main force entered the trail, those 8 men opened fire on an entire regiment. What followed was so devastating that Vietnamese military records still refer to it as the catastrophic ambush by unknown forces. This is the story of Long Lê Lợi, the ambush that rewrote jungle warfare, the mission that proved 8 men could face an army, survive being surrounded by 2,500 enemy soldiers, and systematically destroy nearly 900 of them without losing a single man. February 21st, 1968, Bien Hoa Province, Long Con District Operational Area, 15 kilometers northeast of Nui Jat Base. 8 Australian soldiers moved through the jungle like phantoms. They belonged to 3 Squadron Special Air Service. Their call sign was Hotel 3. They were deeper in enemy territory than any conventional force would dare to go. Australian intelligence had intercepted signs that the 274th Viet Cong regiment was moving through the area. More than 2,500 hardened fighters, veterans of jungle warfare, moving weapons, ammunition, food, and medicine south through a critical supply corridor. Friendly forces were stretched thin. There were no battalions to stop them. Only 8 men stood in their path. The numbers were brutal, outnumbered more than 300 to 1. Jungle itself was an enemy triple canopy rainforest, blocked out most. Sunlight visibility was barely 10 meters. Humidity hovered near 95%. The temperature sat at 38 degrees Celsius, over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and never dropped. Each man carried nearly 50 kilograms of gear, weapons, ammunition, water, food, medical supplies, radios, everything needed to survive for weeks without resupply. The ground was slick red clay and rotting vegetation. Vines hooked into skin and clothing. One snap twig could mean death. Sound behaved strangely here. Cicadas screamed constantly, masking footsteps and danger. Leading the patrol was Sergeant Bob Kearney, a veteran of counterinsurgency operations in Malaya. He understood jungle warfare wasn't about aggression. It was about patience. With him were Corporal Jim McDougall, a demolitions expert, and Private Peter Digger Evans, their scout, a man who could read a footprint like a written sentence. They had spent 18 months learning how the Viet Cong thought, moved, and fought at 1430 hours. Everything changed. Digger Evans froze mid-step. His hand went up. Stop. He was staring at the ground. Fresh tracks, hundreds of them, deep impressions in wet mud, heavy loads, military sandals. A large force, possibly the regiment itself, had passed less than an hour earlier. Doctrine said one thing. Withdraw, call for extraction, survive. Kearney studied the tracks, then his men, and made a decision that defied every rule of warfare. They would stay. 8 men would ambush a regiment. This wasn't madness. It was Australian SAS doctrine. While American units relied on mass, noise, and firepower, the SAS relied on invisibility. Small teams, minimal movement, days of observation, followed by one moment of overwhelming violence. Enemies should never know you existed until it was already too late. Kearney selected the ambush site, a narrow trail junction boxed in by bamboo and thick jungle. Perfect terrain, no maneuver space, no escape over 8 silent hours. They prepared 14 Claymore mines, were emplaced along a 40-meter killing zone. Spaced precisely, each mine contained 700 steel balls, designed to shred anything standing in front of them. An M60 machine gun was positioned to fire straight. Down the trail, riflemen formed an L-shaped ambush with overlapping Fields of fire escape routes were marked with angled luminous tape, invisible to the enemy each man carried. Enough ammunition for only 10 minutes of full combat. After that, they would be dead or gone at 17:30. A Viet Cong scout team passed through. 12 men relaxed, talking quietly. They walked within meters of the Australians. One soldier stopped 3 feet from Evans, urinated, and stared directly at him, seeing nothing but jungle. The patrol didn't move. They were invisible. 14 hours passed. Leeches fed, muscles cramped, sweat-soaked uniforms. Hundreds of enemy troops moved past in the darkness. The main body would come 6:22 a.m., February 22, and the first light crept through the canopy. 40 Viet Cong troops entered the kill zone, weapons slung, confident behind them. Hundreds more. Kearney waited, then squeezed the detonator. The jungle exploded. 14 Claymores detonated in sequence. Thousands of steel balls tore through bodies, trees and earth. The trail vanished in smoke and blood. The M60 opened fire. 7 seconds. 140 rounds. Rifles joined in the air, filled with cordite, smoke, and screams. The first wave was annihilated, and then the regiment attacked. Viet Cong doctrine demanded aggression. Overwhelmed the ambush, they charged, but the jungle betrayed them. Narrow trails funneled men directly into interlocking fire. The machine gun cut them down in waves. Bodies piled atop bodies at 15 meters. Artillery arrived. 105 millimeters. Shells ripped the jungle apart. White phosphorus ignited flesh and trees alike. There was nowhere to run for 31 minutes. 400 shells pounded a 300-meter square. The regiment ceased to exist when flanking attempts began. Kearney gave the order break. Contact smoke grenades, suppressive fire, perfect withdrawal. 4 minutes later, helicopters lifted them out. 8 men aboard. No casualties post-battle. Analysis told the full story. Over 900 Viet Cong killed, wounded, or missing. The 274th Regiment was combat ineffective for months. Vietnamese records called it a disaster inflicted by unknown forces. The tactics spread through the SAS. Small teams, perfect positioning, sudden violence, immediate extraction. Kill ratios of 20-1. Sometimes higher, but it didn't change the war. Vietnam wasn't lost tactically, it was lost strategically, as Sergeant Kearney later said. We proved we could beat them. We just couldn't prove why it mattered. The mattered. Jungle has reclaimed Long Lê Lợi. The trails are gone. The silence is complete, but history remembers 8 men. An impossible ambush, a perfect victory in an unwinnable war.